Early in August, I was just driving on my way to work, and then I passed out behind the wheel and I ended up in the ditch. I didn't realize that I took as many things for granted as I did. Um, I really, I've always thought that I was invincible. So having that kind of slapped me in the face that, life is short. You got to take advantage of all the moments that you have with all the people in your life, with friends and family, and making sure that all that time with them really, really matters, because you never know when it can be taken away.
Rob Clark, sports director at KEYC News, shares how a life-altering incident reshaped both his career and personal life, highlighting the perseverance that fueled his journey.
I asked the doctors if I'm like, hey, what do I need to do? Like, do I need to lose weight? Do I need to this or that? Like, what is it? Just no pacemaker, please. And they basically told me, like, that's not an option.
Welcome to Motivation Monday. We're here with Rob Clark. Rob, you're a dear friend, a great coworker, and I'm excited to talk to you and learn more about your story.
Yeah, let's get to it.
Yeah, I'm excited. Well, let's start off with congratulating you on your 10 years at KEYC. That's a very pivotal moment. How do you feel?
Yeah, really long time here at KEYC. I know coming out of college, this station has kind of really given me everything. Been able to start out as a news reporter and work my way all the way up to sports director. So this place has a special place in my heart.
Very cool. So how was your experience first starting at KEYC? How has that transitioned?
It was really great because I started at KEYC. I'm one of the few people in the newsroom that started at KEYC as an intern, and then kind of learned everything that there was to know from a lot of great people at this station in the summer of 2014. And then in the fall of 2014, I guess it was about December, I was able to start as a general news reporter. So that was kind of fun I actually got the job before I had finished college, and I was going to school out at South Dakota State. So I would actually commute and then work on Saturdays and Sundays and go back to school for Monday through Friday classes there my senior year. So yeah.
You were committed. You were driven.
I was very committed. Yeah, this place is great.
I'm going to throw a tough one at you. In your 10 years at KEYC, what has been one of the biggest or most amazing opportunities? Stories?
I think one of the most amazing opportunities for me since starting at KEYC would probably be being able to cover a Super Bowl. That was something that, growing up, I never thought that I would be in the same room as those sort of people and whatnot. And able to go up there with sports director at the time, Claire Dow, that was really a cool experience. And the Minneapolis Miracle was probably the best moment that I've been able to cover in person. That was just really surreal to be in the press box, and in case Keenum throws that ball down the sideline, like I had been packing up all my stuff. I was like, oh, game's basically over, and there's not much left to do here. And then of course you see that play happen, and it was like, oh, cool. Like I mean, I'm still in shock over what happened from that day, and it was just a surreal moment. So those are a couple of really cool opportunities, but and I love football too, so I hold a little bit closer.
Nice. And how have you seen yourself transform on air?
Transformed on air quite a bit because when I first started out, I was Robert Clark, and that was me.
Robert Clark, I like it.
It is the news reporter. It was Robert Clark. But then when we shifted to
That's
sports,
a TV name. Yeah, Robert Clark.
We took off the and then it was just Rob Clark when I transitioned into sports after a couple of years. So
and soon it'll be R. Clark.
We'll just keep dropping on syllables. We're clean shaven when we first started. Now we've got the beard, and then we dropped the So yeah, no, I think the biggest transition for me was just kind of finding that confidence. Confidence was something I really struggled with my first couple of years here, and the best piece of advice I got from a professor was fake it till you make it, and that was kind of something that I always did. And so I think the biggest change for me was after the first couple of years in the business was kind of finding myself and really learning to embrace those sort of things and not being scared of being in front of the camera or whatnot, because that was something that I was just like, anytime I've always been a really good public speaker, but as soon as like I got in front of the camera, that was always something that I kind of struggled with. And now I really enjoy that side of the gig and everything. So,
So would you say in the beginning, not that you weren't authentic, but it was more of a facade, and now you're kind of stepping into authenticity on air?
yeah, a lot more authenticity now in year 10. It only took, 7 to 10 years to kind of figure that all out. But yeah, authenticity, I would say for sure is something that, has really come a long ways, because I think first few years, everything's happening so fast. You're just trying to make sure that you're hitting all these deadlines and you're covering all these stories, and you're just getting the basic information and the nuts and bolts out. And then it's like, once I got into, probably my 5th or 6th year, that's when the creativity started coming out in some of my writing. And then the on-air presence just continued to kind of get more and more comfortable. And, a couple things that I used to read over scripts like 3 to 5 times before I would go out on air. And like, that's what I did when I was filling in for weekends or when I was a weekend sports anchor. And, that was like 5 or 6 years ago. And now I don't really pre-read any scripts at all. Like, I just want to get it, and I want to read it cold out on air when I'm doing the performance, because
That's scary, a little bit intimidating now.
yeah, but I think it's the most natural. And I've learned that there's more mistakes that happen if you're kind of read over it ahead of time, and then things don't go exactly to plan on broadcast. Then it's harder to kind of roll with those punches or whatnot. So I just like getting it and see whatever Haley McCormick has written in the prompter for me, and don't always follow exactly what is said, because, we all make mistakes, and then just kind of, go with it and do it on there.
So for people that don't know the responsibilities or job duties of a sports anchor, what does your day-to-day look like?
Yeah, so our day-to-day kind of varies a little bit, but usually, I will get into work around 2 to 2:30 on a typical day, and first thing I'll do is open up internet browser and check out all the local conference websites to see what's going on in that evening, because at the end of the day, there's 30 plus high schools that we're covering for local sports, and we also have the colleges, MSU, Gustavus, Bethany, that we're responsible for. And we want to make sure that we're covering, professional sports as well. So when, the Minnesota Vikings are going to the playoffs and whatnot, and that early exit, we want to make sure that we're still,
You're there,
covering those sort of things. So first thing is kind of check out that for the day. And then usually what we'll try to structure our day to look like is we want to be grabbing some interviews with either high schoolers or the college teams kind of early on. And then, that usually happens between 3 and 4:30 when school's getting out and all that sort of stuff. And then in between all that time, we'll be working on producing the 6 o'clock. And then usually, we'll try to get a couple games, bare minimum. If it's Haley and I in the office, we're going to try to get, at least 3 to 4 games to put on for highlights for the 10 o'clock. So yeah, usually it's pretty packed there for, 6 o'clock. Then after we get done with 6 o'clock show at 6:30, then Haley and I will hop in the cars. We're going to go to those games that are typically at, 7 o'clock. We'll be out and about until about 8:30. And then it's time to kind of put all that stuff together for the 10 o'clock show. And then of course on Friday nights, sports extra nights, it's a little bit more busy, but that's my favorite night is definitely sports extra.
Nice. Well, we kind of sit near each other in the newsroom, and I've never met anybody more enthusiastic, you and Haley, of course, more enthusiastic about sports. I mean, I'll ask you a question, you'll give me the history, you'll teach me a lot of new stuff. So what has been something that you've noticed from interviewing so many different athletes?
I think the one thing I've noticed from interviewing so many different athletes is everybody has a different story, and there's a lot of different ways to achieve the same thing. What might work for one athlete might not work for another, and just kind of seeing how they're able to go about their business is really cool. Hearing, what it was that, you had Brandon Williamson on the podcast, and, his story is a really cool story that, I think about a lot. To see somebody go, work their way up through junior college and then to play at a D1 school to get drafted, that's really cool to see a local athlete make that progression. And so, everybody, whether we cover high school athletes, college athletes, it's really cool to see what motivates them, what drives them, and to see what it takes to, be performing at that top level. And we've been really blessed to cover a lot of national champions and Olympians here in this area. And that's one thing I tell people all the time is like, yeah, I work in Mankato. It might be a smaller market, but I love it because we get to see so many great athletes, whether it be, whether it be the collegiate level or high school level, and we see a lot of people from this area go on to do some really incredible things.
So, Rob, when you were younger, did you envision yourself being a sports anchor? Did you know that this was what you were going to do?
I did not.
What were your expectations? What were your goals? What did you want to do?
So my goals growing up, I did always want to be the next Dick Bramer for the Minnesota Twins.
Okay.
Like when I was a 4th or 5th grader, like I just listening to Dick Bramer and then listening to Burt Blyleven do their thing on the Minnesota Twins broadcast, that was always something that I really, really enjoyed. But when I got into high school, I had kind of shifted to, I really wanted to become a pharmacist.
Oh.
So that was kind of what I had set my eyes on. Yeah. But, when I was a kid, though, it was definitely a dream of mine to become, Minnesota Twins play-by-play announcer. So I'm not that, but I did end up in sports. But yeah, no, pharmacy, that was kind of what I, went to school initially for.
Really? I didn't know
So yeah, when I went to South Dakota State, I was in the pre-pharmacy program. I lasted about a semester.
That was me with psychology. As soon as I took neuroscience, I was out.
Chemistry really weeded me out. And, that is a class that weeds a lot of people out, and it got me. And, after that, it was, I have no idea what I'm going to do. Oh. And so I just kind of threw a dart at the wall and
threw a dartboard.
Threw a dartboard at a dart, and we landed on mass communications. No, it was I thought about maybe going into teaching and stuff because my mom was a teacher and I really enjoyed everything that she did and being able to be a leader and teach kids kind of the way and whatnot and have a positive influence on their life. I thought that was really cool, and that was something that I wanted to potentially do, but I wanted to be a little bit different than my mother. And I had, played sports and stuff in high school. I had some injuries, so my senior year I had gone out for drama, and that's where I kind of found like, hey, I'm kind of good at some of this sort of stuff. And so I was like,
more creative.
Hey, yeah. Yeah. And then I was like, well, why not just, communications? That seems like that could be a thing for me. And so I just kind of did it, and I really
like, now we're here.
Well, exactly, because I really thought I was not sure. But
there's a beauty in that, like not being sure, because
there is
takes you to a place that you would have not figured out for yourself.
Yeah, and I really I kind of expected like at that, if I were to go back to that point in my life, I think I probably would have failed. Like at that point when I was just going through, I figured I was just going to be doing another one semester, and then, we're going to be looking and trying to find out what Robert wants to do for the rest of his life again, because I had no idea and I didn't know if it was going to stick at all. But
so what was your reaction when you got the KEYC internship? Were you ecstatic? Were you like, oh my gosh, is this real? Pinching yourself?
Yeah, it was, because, after that I'd been a couple years in the program, and I had really, really enjoyed it. And I was able to do a radio internship the year before. I grew up in Spencer, Iowa, and that's where I did my internship with the radio station. And that was such a great experience. And that really confirmed to me that I was in the right field. And because I don't think you really know if you want to do this until you actually get the internship and work, in a newsroom and that sort of thing. So, at the radio station, I was able to kind of do a little bit of everything. I did a little bit of reading off the news. Farmer markets, I was really good at reading the farmer markets, and we had to go on. It was every 6 minutes because they had it was an AM and an FM station there at KICD. So in the morning from like 9 to noon, I would just be buzzing out there with like updated farmer markets.
Nice.
And be like, beans are up, and that whole thing. And that was a lot of fun. But then also, in the evenings, I had the opportunity to, call play-by-play for some baseball and softball games, and really, really enjoyed that. But for me, radio was always missing something. And then so I knew when I went back to school that I want to get more involved with, the cameras, and I think TV is really where I want to be. So really ramped up kind of all that stuff, and, going out and shooting stories there in my junior year, and then got the internship at KEYC. And the reason why I chose KEYC was because my professor had kind of told me about the opportunity that this station would have. And at that time, Vikings training camp was here in the summer. So he was like, hey, if you want to do sports, you could go to a station and intern, but they're probably just going to have you do news. And he's like, hey, I suggest you check out KEYC. And he knew the news director here, which was Dan Ryder. And he's like, hey, you come here, you'll be able to kind of do a little bit of news, do a little bit of sports, and really find out what you like. And it's a great thing about this place is they really let me experiment with a lot of things during that internship, and I really, really loved it.
Oh, in these last 10 years, what would you say you've learned about yourself? And that doesn't necessarily have to be strictly KUIC, but what would you say you'd learn about yourself?
What would I say that I've learned about myself? I've learned that it's really, really good to put myself into uncomfortable situations.
Not many people could say that.
I think
they don't like that.
It's not fun.
It is not fun. No.
And, it wasn't fun. But I think that kind of goes back to what I was talking about earlier as far as like, finding my confidence in myself, in my work. And, really just, I think a lot of people that know me, I don't take things too seriously. But, when it came to my job and stuff, and especially that couple of years, like, oh man, I was just running to get everything like on deadline, and I'm checking over everything and whatnot. And, I think I really needed to kind of step outside of my comfort zone to be able to really become my true self and who I am at this station for sure.
So recently, you kind of had a pivotal moment in your life, and I'd love to hear more about it if you're willing to share.
Yeah, so pivotal, life-changing moment, definitely over the fall. So some people probably have heard this story a couple times, but early in August, I was just driving on my way to work, and then I passed out behind the wheel, and I ended up in the ditch. And, when I came to, I was still kind of driving like in the ditch. And at that point, I was, just didn't know why I'd passed out behind the wheel or whatnot, and, called the ambulance and everything. And, first responders had got there and went to the ER. They ran a bunch of tests on my heart because everything that I had described to them as far as the whole situation kind of would lend them to believe that it was a heart issue. And so got there, did all the tests, and everything like came out looking good. They couldn't find anything. And then I was so hungry from that day because it was early in the morning when I was going into work, and spent the entire day at the emergency room. And so I told my buddy who came and picked me up, and obviously I was not driving. So after everything that had happened, so my buddy took me to Applebee's, and then I passed out again at Applebee's, just waiting to get some food because I was really hungry.
Did it ever come?
No, it didn't. I had to wait until I got home. But yeah, so I had a few episodes where I was passing out.
Did you know what was going on during the moment? Like, did you understand when you were kind of waking up what was happening?
No, it was it happened really, really fast. It was basically a very quick sinking sensation in my chest. And then I just lost consciousness for a few seconds.
And we talked about this earlier. It wasn't just a sinking feeling you had said. It was just like this immense pain, like it dropped to your gut, right? You felt like your heart was in your gut.
Yep. Yep. It was just like kind of like everything had dropped. And then after that, I was out cold. And then, and then coming to that was a really weird feeling because I'm like, why am I in the ditch? Why am I like still actively like driving my car? Because I was probably going about, 20 miles an hour as I'm still like, in the ditch and just kind of trying to wrap my head around everything that happened. And, it was really nice. There was some people that had stopped by and they were the ones that had called the first responders and were checking on me. And they asked me and I told them, I was like, well, I passed out behind the wheel. And, so it was kind of a crazy experience, and it was something where it just kind of continued happening too.
So when you ended up in the hospital, what did the doctors tell you? What was the cause? Because you said that everything seemed fine, but clearly there wasn't.
Yeah, so the doctors at that point in time had said it was syncope, which is basically the medical term for passing out, and they really didn't know what had caused it. So at that point in time, in my follow-up visit with doctors, I had a Holter monitor, which was put on, which essentially is I get, it's a heart monitor, and they've got like little 3 spots where it attaches onto you. And I was put on that for 2 weeks, and everything looked really, really good. And I go to the next appointment and they're like, hey, everything's looking good as far as we know. They told me I was good to drive. So I was really, really happy with that appointment. And I was like, yes, I get to go back to work and actually drive, because I hadn't been driving for a couple of weeks. So Haley's having to, drive me around everywhere for my stories and whatnot. And so I go.
And this was just for caution, just in case these 2 weeks they told you not to drive, just to beware. Like, were they taking in data from your heart monitor? What were they doing?
Wanted to make sure that, it was obviously safe for me to get behind a wheel again after losing consciousness. So that was why they wanted to, run the tests, make sure that everything checked out. And then once they were able to rule out that, then it was, okay for me to drive. And so thought that was the end of it. I get cleared, and then I go to drive into work, have that feeling again right as before I'm to pull off on the highway.
Are you getting like sleepy?
Luckily that time I was able to I just got off to the side of the road and put it in park because I knew what was happening. And I knew I only had a couple of seconds before it was going to be just me, driving and not knowing what's, going on. So
in every situation where you've kind of passed out, have you been alone, or was there someone near you at any of those times outside of Applebee's?
Yeah, Applebee's, there were people around me and whatnot.
And did they tell you how long you were out for?
I think my buddy said it was probably like 5 to 10 seconds.
Okay.
Where he's like, yeah, you just went like this, and
So what was the cause? What did the doctors say? What was the reason?
So, well, after I had been cleared to drive in everything, and they basically told me like, hey, you still have another day or 2 left on that Holter monitor, and then we're going to take it off. It's probably not going to find anything. Well, after I had that episode and I had pulled off to the side of the road, they had tracked all of it, and I probably should have just gone into the ER again right there, but I came into work.
You grind stuff out. You got work to do.
We got some things done, and then I got a call from the doctor because it pinged at Mayo there in Rochester, and so my primary care provider told me you need to go into the ER right now. It was a pretty significant pause in your heartbeat.
And when you say significant pause, how long is that?
6 seconds. So it was. So at that point in time, Haley took me down to the ER here in Mankato, and they basically they showed me a little printout of the heart rate and everything, and I mean it looks like kind of close to a flat line. Like it was not looking too good, and they just said that it was a pretty substantial pause and that they were getting a hospital bed ready in Rochester for me. And then so as soon as they got the bed in Rochester ready for me, then we took off by ambulance and I was on my way to Rochester for the next week.
And what time frame is this?
So, first episode happened beginning of August, like the 3rd or the 4th. And then the trip to Rochester would have been, I think like August 20, it was like 23rd or 24th.
And when you were in Rochester, what happened?
So, got all checked into Rochester. They were, that first night there, the doctor that saw me basically felt like they were going to be putting a pacemaker in right away. And that's kind of what they were prepping me for. But then when it got to be the morning, the next doctor that came in said like, whoa. Before we put a pacemaker in a 31-year-old, let's just check and see what is going on and, how we can treat this. They don't like to put the pacemakers in if they don't have to. So that was why they wanted to run a bunch of tests. And so I got a bunch of testing done. Unfortunately, since I'd gotten there when I did, I think it was like Thursday night into Friday, they had to basically get all that testing done because they can't do testing over the weekend. So like I was just going to be, chilling for a couple days there in Rochester in a hospital room and everything. So they did a bunch of testing on Friday. Unfortunately, they couldn't get everything done that they needed to. The sarcoid test that they did was going to be done on Monday, and then they were going to make their decision about what they wanted to do, because they diagnosed me with high-grade AV block from everything, which is essentially it equates to the top half of my heart was not communicating with the bottom half. It's a signal thing. It wasn't like a blocked artery or anything like that. It was the signal wasn't being communicated from the top half to the bottom half, and then so the bottom half didn't know it needed to beat, and that's why they said that I passed out the way that I did. And so they ran all those tests and then eventually landed on that we're going to need a pacemaker / defibrillator put in place.
And how do you feel so with the pacemaker on you?
It's
because one thing that you had mentioned to me is it's typically, not always, but older age gets pacemakers. It's very rare for young people to get it.
Yeah, it's not common for younger people to get it, from what the doctors told me. I know when I was there in Rochester, waiting in the OR room for my procedure, they had told me that a couple weeks before they had a couple of teenagers that they actually did put pacemakers. One of the nurses told me that couple of teenagers had pacemakers put in. So they're like, you're not the youngest that we've had here, but they're like, typically, with younger people, it's not nearly as common as it is with elderly people. So really the only thing that Rochester found while I was there, and because like I said, they ran all these tests and whatnot, they just found some heart inflammation that came up. And so that was kind of why they decided to go with the pacemaker / defibrillator, because I had a couple of different options, and I really wanted the pacemaker that was basically like a screw that just goes into your heart, compared to the pack with the two leads that run down. They weren't able to do that though, because the doctor thought it would probably be best with the inflammation, is they didn't know how my heart would respond when that swelling around it went down. So that was why they wanted to make sure that the defibrillator was there in place to make sure if there was a cardiac arrest event that it would be there to start everything back up.
And for people that don't know, what is the job of a pacemaker? What does the pacemaker do?
So the pacemaker is basically for my heart if it ever drops below, like I think they have it set at 40 beats per minute at the bottom end. So if my heart rate drops below 40 beats per minute, then it will pace me back up into that range that they deem is okay. And so, for example, when I'm behind the wheel, if I don't get that sinking sensation because the heart will just, start to beat up to the point that it needs to, and to the point to where like I wouldn't be losing consciousness of having, one beat and then having that pause of the 6 seconds. It doesn't allow for that pause to take place because it's just going to get me back up to where I need to be. And then if it goes too high, it can also take me back down. And then the defibrillator is there for if the heart stops altogether. They told me it'll feel like a horse just kicking me in the chest.
Oh my
and
God.
it'll just basically like, just, pop you back up. And then if you have one of those events, you have to go to the ER right away. But yeah.
So what lifestyle changes have you had to make after this incident?
So they really wanted me to, I had a little bit of higher blood pressure. But it was nothing that never really needed any treatment, but now with, the device and everything placed, that's something that I've taken a lot more seriously. And I'd say that my diet, which has not always been the best because
You and me both.
I love, I love a lot of foods that are bad for you, but, it's one of those things where, now I know I have to make a conscious effort to really prioritize my health and make sure, what I'm putting in my body is good. And, I've made sure to exercise a lot more. And it's funny though, because after I got done, with the surgery and everything, I was like, okay, so recovery wise, they told me like, yeah, you'll probably want to kind of take it easy. And, but when you feel up to doing it, like you can start, exerting yourself. I couldn't lift 10 pounds for like a month after. That was, just one. And then this arm could not go past, like, I couldn't raise it. So like it could only come up to here because they didn't want the leads that had just been placed to pull out or anything. They needed the scar tissue to form. So I ended up, challenging myself and be like, okay, I'm going to try to run a mile a day. And like, I'm just going to get back to that. Like I did, track and cross country and stuff in high school. So I was like, I can do this. It's not something that I've done in a long time, but I'm like, I need to start running again. So I started running again and on the treadmill. And then when I went in for my 3-month device checkup, they told me, oh, there's 46 episodes that we have recorded off your device. And I just kind of looked at them and I was like, I had no idea what that was. And then they asked me, they're like, well, what were you doing yesterday at 5:00 in the evening? And I was like, oh, I was on the treadmill running. So they went through all of it and it had just been, all of those episodes were literally from any time that I'd gotten on and,
You
ran.
exercised 46 times.
That's accountability right
Seriously,
there.
that's
So
the drive.
they were able to see that. They had to go through every single one of them to make sure that it was like the rhythm and everything looked the way that it was supposed to. But yeah, no, that was kind of funny because I noticed that a lot of the way that they have these set up are for elderly people. So, for instance, it checks like it kind of tests like once a day. And so it's just kind of like measuring. And so it understands how much voltage to use if you do have an event or to pace you. And so that was something where I asked them on my first device checkout. I was like, every night at 9:30 in the evening, I'm just like feeling like, I can just kind of feel it. Like it feels like it's pacing and stuff. And they were like, oh, well, that's just the test. And I was like, well, I work until, 11 every night. So can we like get that moved into like, when it's in the middle of the night when I'm sleeping, when it's kind of like doing that test and calculating. So
What does it feel like? Like, I can't imagine. Like, I don't know. Is that a weird question to ask? What does a
no,
pacemaker feel
it's not a weird question to ask. It's kind of weird though, like because we your heart just beats, you know, it's basically on autopilot all the time, right?
Yeah.
And then with that, like it's speeding my heart up, and it's kind of an eerie feeling if I'm being honest. Like
Eerie?
yeah, like it's like wait, I don't. It just feels like I don't have any control over like what it's. But I realize after a minute, then it stops, and it's the way it
That's
is every single day.
that's like a scary, scary feeling, not having control over your own body. What were the thoughts that were going through your head during this? During this
Um,
process, during the incident, what were your thoughts like?
I really did not want a pacemaker. Like I,
Fair,
I
rightfully so,
like
yeah.
the whole time. I did not. I asked the doctors if there was. I'm like, hey, what do I need to do? Like, do I need to lose weight? Do I need to this or that? Like, what is it? Just no pacemaker, please. And they basically told me like that's not an option at this point. So that was hard to hear. Um, but as my mom loved to remind me, like it's better than the alternative. And I realized kind of from this whole experience that I'm really lucky to be sitting here today because when I crashed my car, I was on the highway going about 55 to 60 miles an hour, and I crossed, I mean, could have been a semi on that road. If I was in a busier stretch of it, I mean, you're looking at a car crash. My car was fine. I was fine. I mean, all things considered, I came out pretty good and a lot more lucky than other people that have been in that position. So that was kind of what I used to wrap my head around the fact that like this is the new normal. That was the phrase that everybody loved to say during COVID, the new normal. Well, this is my new normal, the pacemaker / defibrillator. And, I'm kind of reminded of it with the scar every day. But
I bet it's a cool scar.
it is
Cool
a
scar.
cool stars. Cool
Stars,
scar.
cool star.
So,
I feel like that's a really positive take because I feel like most people would be kind of down about it. This is new change at the age of 31, but I feel like you have a very positive outlook on it and very
yeah,
inspiring.
and I mean after the procedure and everything too, it's whole outlook on life is completely different.
How so?
Because I I didn't realize that I took as many things for granted as I did. Um I really I've always thought that I was invincible. So having that kind of slap me in the face that life is short. You got to take advantage of all the moments that you have with all the people in your life, with friends and family, and making sure that all that time with them really really matters, because you never know when it can be taken away. So that was one thing that I've reflected on quite a bit, and I made sure that since then it's like, okay, I need to take care of myself, do the things to make sure that I'm going to be around for a long time, and also just like really really valuing um the smallest things, even like day-to-day stuff, saying hi to strangers on the bike trail or whatnot, just like stuff like that. Just like what sort of impact do I want to make? And because I have no idea when it will be taken away. And so yeah.
I feel like that's something that I typically take for granted. Like when that stuff was going on, you couldn't drive, so you had to rely on other people to help you. That's kind of something that I take for granted. It's like, wow, well, I could take care of myself right now. Like I have the power to do that. And sometimes I'm not grateful for it, and I take that for granted. And it's just like waking up every day and being like, you know what, I'm grateful that I don't have to be wheeled into a restroom by somebody else, or I could do things on my own. Like that's something that I feel like it's good that you have that outlook on it. It's very positive.
And there's a lot more things that, are important to life than, all of our
Tiny problems. Yeah.
daily tiny problems. That was one thing where, I've always been really go when it comes to work and stuff. And it's like, I can slow down a little bit. And
So would you
don't
say
need to
you kind
be.
of took a step back a little bit?
I wouldn't say that I took a step back. Still have a hard work ethic and everything, but just kind of, understanding that it's not it's not as important as what, like, my career for me has always been something that, I've probably put ahead of everything else. And I'd say that, I've kind of shifted that a little bit to make sure that, the relationships with friends and family, that I'm prioritizing those sort of things as compared to like my career. So, and it was something where it's like I realized, like, okay, I mean, Haley can tell you, like, I was on the phone with her in that ambulance ride over to Rochester, telling her about what games to get for Sports Extra and like what the plan was and everything. And I know my parents
Still
were,
working.
yeah, no,
You're
my
still
parents were upset because, like, when I was in the ER, I was still making calls to her every day and trying to take care of everything. And it was like, well, in this situation, like, maybe just stop caring about work. Like, take care of yourself.
So like a good
And if you
work-life
need,
balance.
yes, yep,
Okay.
and
That's a good point.
it's one of those things where it's like, no, I got to get right before, I can come back to work and be that, team player and that guy that's going to be able to produce the sort of content that's going to tell impactful stories and highlights for our area.
I think career is obviously very important. Why do you think you took it as like the extreme in a sense, like career number one?
I think, for me, I wasn't very good at sports, like, growing up. I mean, I played baseball, I swam, I did cross country, I did track. And after the pharmacy thing failed, I think, for me, career wise, it was one of those things where I didn't achieve what I wanted to in high school. And I wanted to make sure that I would be able to cover sports and everything, for my career, and that I was going to be successful at it. And for me, I didn't get the job to be in the sports department twice. I was turned down as the weekend sports anchor twice here at KEYC at this station. And I was determined, though. Like, I was going to make it happen, and didn't matter how long I was going to report in news. Eventually, I was going to get my time to shine in sports. And I, really, really wanted that for myself. And, I think for me, it kind of proved to myself that I could do it, because that was something that I wasn't able to do in high school. I wasn't able, I wasn't a varsity athlete. I wasn't, with the Letterman jacket or nothing, in high school. And that was always something that I really wanted to be good at sports. And so I was like, well, not good enough at sports, but I'm going to be dang good at, telling sports stories and highlights and everything. So.
And that you are, because anytime I have a question, I know who to go to. How did you not let the rejection kind of affect your end goal? Because, I mean, I feel like if I was denied twice, I'd be like, okay, maybe it's not for me. But you're like, no, this is for me. I'm going to do it. I'm going to pursue it. What was that kind of motive?
Being told that you're not good enough at something, whether it's directly being told you're not good enough at something.
Someone said, hey, Rob, you're not good enough?
Or if you, no, they didn't. But, whether you're told that, you're not good enough at something, or if, you're told that through not getting a job that you apply for me, it made me hungrier. Like, I really was like, okay, now I gotta kind of step everything up and whatnot. And it kind of all goes back to what I was talking about, is stepping outside of my comfort zone. Like, those were things that I was going to have to do, and I was going to have to overcome to be in the sports department, a prominent figure in the sports department, be the weekend sports anchor, become the sports director. Those were all things that I really, really had to do and get over. And, I am a lot better person today because of those challenges that I faced in this industry. And I understand sports, whether it be the sports themselves or, sports in a TV sense, it's all super, super competitive. So, that was something that, I just was like, okay, got to work harder. We gotta level up. We gotta make sure that, it was this. And so, I mean, I asked the sports director at the time, I asked Claire, I was like, hey, what do I have to do? What do I have to do to, get to this point and everything? And she really helped me along a lot. And, she really drove me. And I've always had a passion for it. Like, even in college, I would turn on Twins games, and then I would just sit in my dorm and I would just read them off like I was a play-by-play guy.
Mm.
So, that was like something that I'd done then. And it was something that I did, the first few years here on the job, because any chance that I could get to try and like potentially make myself better, that's really what I wanted. So,
Do you think it was perfect timing? If you had gotten the job earlier, do you think you'd be ready for it? Do you think it kind of unfolded in the right time it was supposed to?
it definitely unfolded in the right time that it was supposed to. Because I think had I gotten the job the first time or the second time, I really don't think I was truly ready for it personally. So to be able to go through a couple of cycles, and I still helped out immensely in the sports department. Like, I was shooting a bunch of highlights on Sports Extra. I was doing stories and everything as well for the department. But I really think that, that was the best thing that could have happened to me, especially because, being in my young 20s, like, I'm sure that probably would have gone straight to my head had I been, promoted into that sort of position. But I don't know, it humbled me, and
It's a good take.
yeah, it humbled me, and I don't know, kind of put things in right perspective.
So for somebody that's kind of going through a life-altering health condition or something that's kind of changing their life right now, what's the advice you'd give?
I would say just be flexible, be adaptable. You're not always going to get the news that you want to hear. And as far as like my health event that I had, it's very, very small compared to a lot of the other things that people are dealing with. So I would just say, if you're dealing with that, just try to handle it the best that you can. And I don't know, fight like heck. If you're going through cancer or something like that, like, just, prioritize your health, put that first. And, I think that's really the best that, we can do with the circumstances, whether we like it or not. I had to get over everything pretty quick, because it would have been pretty silly for me to be sitting here stewing over a pacemaker device being put in when, there's people out there that are dealing with some real stuff. So,
Well, you're also dealing with some real stuff, so don't undermine it. That is real stuff. But I do want to thank you for being vulnerable and sharing your story. I know it's going to help somebody today.
absolutely.
So thank you so much, Rob
Yeah, it
Clark,
was so much
for
fun.
taking the time. Yeah, of course.